6 men, 7 days, literally dropped into the freezing Arctic wilderness. No tents, basically no food, and no specialized heating gear. Imagine facing the freezing cold armed with only the clothes on your back. It is an absolutely incredible test of human endurance. Today in this explainer, we're going to unpack the insane biological and psychological tactics these guys use to battle the elements and stay alive. Let's get into it.
The gravity of the situation hit them immediately on day one. As Jimmy put it, if we don't get inside before it gets dark, we might freeze to death. No pressure. You know, the sun setting in the Arctic? It's not just a nice cue to go to bed. It triggers a rapid, terrifying drop into lethal temperatures. From the literal second their boots hit the ice, they were in a dead sprint against the sun, just trying to dig a hole in the snow so they wouldn't freeze on night one.
So, it brings us to the ultimate question, right? How exactly do you survive the unforgiving Arctic with zero shelter, especially when the shadow of a huge past failure is looming right over you? Because honestly, this isn't just a biological story about conserving calories or shivering in the cold. It's a massive psychological story about raw human willpower and a really desperate attempt at redemption.
The stakes here were way higher than just getting through a miserable week. They flat out admitted, "We failed our last survival video, so this is an attempt at redemption." And that adds such a fascinating psychological layer to all of this. When your body is literally screaming at you to tap out, pride and the need to prove something to yourself, they act like rocket fuel. For Jimmy and the guys, quitting just wasn't on the table. It wouldn't just be a physical failure, it would absolutely crush them psychologically.
Moving into Pillar 1, the crucial snow shelter.
Okay, to survive the Arctic, getting out of the wind is your absolute non-negotiable priority. 10 minutes. That is the terrifying amount of time it takes for exposure to the freezing wind to literally cause a limb to freeze. If they didn't get a physical barrier between their bodies and that wind, this whole challenge would have ended on night one with a major medical emergency.
So, they desperately dug into the deep snow, and man, what they ended up with was definitely not a 5-star hotel. It was this cramped, incredibly claustrophobic snow cave. Picture this. 6 grown men packed together like sardines, sub-zero temperatures, their camera equipment literally freezing to the ground right next to their heads. By their own admission, it was the worst sleep of their entire lives. But here's the thing, it worked. It kept them alive. By packing in so tight, they trapped just enough of their combined radiant body heat to keep from freezing to death that first night.
Now on to Pillar 2, battling frostbite and cold.
As the days dragged on and the temperatures just kept plummeting, the biological threats really started piling up. Enter frostnip. This is the scary preliminary stage of frostbite, where your skin turns totally white and you lose all feeling. If you get it, you need immediate active warming, or you risk permanent tissue loss. And this wasn't some abstract textbook danger for the guys. It got terrifyingly real on day 2. Chandler's toes completely lost circulation and went numb. They had to take extreme emergency action, literally shoving his freezing foot into a teammate's bare armpit just to restore blood flow before it was too late.
So to fight off that bitter cold, they desperately needed a fire. The problem was a massive overnight blizzard had soaked absolutely everything. All the surrounding wood was drenched. But that's where their survival ingenuity really kicked in. Step 1, find a dead standing tree, chop deep into it, and pull out the dry inner wood that the snow hadn't ruined. Step 2, meticulously shave that dry wood down into incredibly fine, highly flammable tinder. And finally, step 3, use dry feathers to catch a tiny, super fragile spark from their striker. It was an absolutely exhausting process, but it worked. It finally gave them that essential heat source.
All right, let's look at Pillar 3, the desperate food hunt. By day 3, the crew was running on absolute fumes. They were hitting a severe caloric deficit. Think about the timeline here. Day 1 was this freezing shock to the system. Day 2 brought the frostnip scare and a literal blizzard. And now, day 3, they're trudging through deep snow in soaking wet clothes, and genuine starvation is setting in. Without calories, their bodies just couldn't generate heat anymore, and morale completely tanked. And the frustration? It hit a total boiling point. One of them yelled out, "Everything is wrong, nothing's going right." When you are in that state, simple, everyday tasks feel like climbing a mountain. Just anchor yourself in the severe emotional toll they were facing for a second. Starving, exhausted, freezing to your very core. Every single minor setback feels like the literal end of the world. The psychological walls were seriously closing in on them. Desperate to get some calories in their system, they grabbed an ice auger and headed to the frozen lake near their camp. 4 agonizing hours. 4 hours manually drilling through solid ice, burning calories they absolutely did not have to spare. And the result? 6 feet. 6 solid feet of ice, and their drills simply wasn't long enough. They didn't hit a single drop of water. It was this incredibly crushing, exhausting defeat that left them with absolutely nothing to show for it. Right in the middle of all this physical and emotional agony, there was this ultimate temptation just hovering right over their heads: the rescue plane. Every single day, a plane flew over their camp, and the crew had a flare gun. Literally, one shot into the sky and all their misery would be over instantly. They'd be warm, fed, safe. But the cost of that safety? Well, as part of their challenge rules, they'd have to shave their heads. But infinitely worse than that, they would publicly fail their redemption challenge.
So, how close did they actually come to giving up? Listen to this. I had my finger on the trigger, bro. I almost did it. When your boots are soaking wet, you're shivering uncontrollably, and you haven't eaten a real meal in days, the whole abstract concept of redemption starts to feel pretty meaningless compared to the instant relief of a warm room. They were hovering right on the ragged edge of tapping out. But you know what? They chose to fight. Realizing that the lake ice by the camp was a total dead end, they packed up and went on this exhausting trek through a dense forest in blizzard conditions, dodging massive fresh moose tracks, risking immediate hyperthermia by crashing through the snow into freezing water. Ultimately, they relied on drone scouting to find a bend in a river where the ice looked a bit thinner. This was it. This was their final desperate play.
Which brings us to the climax: redemption and survival.
Back out on the ice at the new fishing hole, the tension was just insane. 7 brutal, agonizing hours sitting completely still in the biting wind. They were just hemorrhaging body heat by the second. At one point, Jimmy actually hooked a fish. But in this crazy, frantic scramble right at the surface, he lost it barehanded. It was this heart-stopping false start that came so close to just breaking their spirits entirely.
But then, the moment of truth. We got one! The massive release of tension, the sheer adrenaline, it was explosive. After days of literal starvation, relentless failures, and freezing temperatures, Jimmy finally pulled a life-saving fish straight up through the ice.
You literally cannot overstate the biological and psychological cascade of benefits from that one single catch. First off, it was a massive, instant morale boost that completely united the team again. Second, and most importantly, it provided the critical calories their starving bodies so desperately needed to generate internal heat and fend off hypothermia. Ultimately, it was a complete 180, a total shift from despair to practically guaranteed survival for the rest of their time out there.
As they finally cooked their catch over the fire, the emotional high was just incredible. I don't think I've ever had fish this fresh before, because this tastes delicious. Let's be real. Food never, ever tastes as good as when you've literally fought the elements to the brink of your own sanity just to earn it.
This entire 7-day ordeal is such a fascinating study in human endurance, crazy ingenuity, and the incredibly heavy psychological weight of redemption. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. If you were pushed to the absolute brink of freezing and starvation, sitting out there on the ice with wet boots, failing gear, just staring up at that rescue plane passing by, would you shoot the flare to escape the pain, or would you fight for your redemption? Something to think about. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I will catch you all in the next one.